Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Community FC, where I've got another episode of My Club coming for you. So, this is going to be a very special episode of My Club, as we're going to be having the first non-Premier League club. So, I'm very excited. I don't know a ton about the club I'm going to talk about, so I'm really interested to get into the stories and hear everything about it. So, let me introduce my guest, Jack. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. And so for any audio listeners, he is wearing a kind of dark blue and white kit. So I don't know if that gives it away, but the club we are going to be talking about is Millwall, aka the Lions. So we'll crack on with it. But yeah, I'm super excited because everyone else has been Premier League. And yes, that's most people's ballpark, but that is not what I want to be able to get from Community FC. I want to be going to all kind of levels. And, Millwall are not even that far away from the Premier League at the moment, obviously. So that's really interesting. I looked at the table. Are you doing all right? Fixtures and results?
It's. I mean, we're forever kissing the underbelly of the Premier League. But I mean, I don't know about how much I want to get my hopes up, because being a Millwall fan is essentially, and I suppose this summarizes the whole episode, being a Millwall fan is an exercise in being miserable for long periods of time, punctuated by strange moments of extreme joy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you're going to go outside the Premier League, you might as well go to the best club in the Championship. So,
there we go. Fight and talk. I mean, the interesting thing you're saying right now is obviously I've been a very privileged fan for most of my life supporting Manchester United, but I am maybe somewhat experiencing that at the moment with lots of despair and very brief joy at the moment. So I can get on that way.
It must be so hard sitting in the top half of the Premier
I
League.
know.
Oh no, with Paul Pogba in the middle of midfield.
It really is first world problems, isn't it? Yeah.
I feel like maybe this podcast and what's going on at the moment is like your penance,
yes,
for all the enjoyment you had growing up.
Absolutely, and I like to put myself as quite a realistic football fan, and also like I'm not as I said before, and I've talked a million times, like if United got relegated, from the Super League stuff, if it happened and they got relegated, like. Yeah. 4 leagues, £100 million, and I was going to non-league football, I'd be doing it every week because that's the club I support. But yeah, so it's yes. But yeah, it's thick and thin, and I've had occasional success over the years and relative success to United, obviously not like as you're saying, like top half of the Prem and stuff, but yeah, it's from where we were obviously such a dominant force. It's such a change, but that is part of being a fan. Anyway, let's not talk about my club, let's talk about your club. So I guess I like to start with some of the more like fun questions, and then before that talk about like how you get into it, which I find was one of my most fascinating questions, is why people support their club. So do you want to talk about like how long you've supported your club, or why you support your club?
So they're kind of linked together as questions. I come from a family that originates from Southeast London. So if my granddad has lived in Southeast London since he was born, and he's now 86, and he first went to his first Millwall game when he was 7 years old.
Wow.
Which is probably potentially pre-war, just pre-war, like Second World War, that is.
Yeah.
And I know that his father went to his first Millwall game when he was 7 years old. My dad was subsequently taken when he was 7 years old, and similarly, I was taken when I was 7 years old. So that would have been 1999, I think. I was born in 92. That's quick maths. 99. And I remember, and so I remember going to see, it was Millwall versus Blackpool, and I can remember commenting that I really liked the orange kit, and my dad being like, yeah, well, you don't like the orange kit, do you? I was like, yeah, okay. But it was, I remember it was a 0-0 draw. It was dull as anything. I can just remember there was a bit of aggro, as there always was back then. And then there still is. But I think it was one of those things where, as you're kind of growing up, like you sort of, as a youngster, you kind of veer towards whoever's the more successful team. And I can kind of openly admit, as a kid, I was very, I was keen on Man U because, who didn't like watching Man U back then? They were amazing, and it was like trouble with, as you kind of come into like your knowledge of football, you start watching things like the '98 World Cup, and I remember seeing Michael Owen scoring all those amazing goals. So I quite like Liverpool, but in the same way, there was I like Paul Scholes because he's really small, and I was really small and still am. But and so there was kind of those sorts of things. But it was one of those things where, because it was like Millwall was like the family club, it was different, and I really liked the fact that there was this kind of that no one had ever heard of us. And so when people asked you, who do you support? And you'd be like, Millwall. And people would be like, what's that?
Who?
You'd be like, yeah, good question. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, I come from, I mean, they're a Dockers club, right? That's their kind of thing. And my great granddad was a Docker. So it's kind of, I've got a very direct link back to, the very early stages of the club. So I feel kind of a big affinity with that, and with it in that sense.
That's that's a really nice story. We actually had someone on here before that had the same thing. Their granddad worked on the docks down in Southampton, and it was a family thing, and that's why the dad supported it, and then it went through there for that Southampton fan as well, which is really interesting. Nice. A question: is there any particular reason? Was seven just the age that just because of the grandfather doing it, or was it just the age that they thought they can sit through the match and won't be so much of a disruption kind of thing?
Exactly. It's being able to kind of sit and understand the game, because I think when you're a bit younger than that, it's very loud, and you see when people bring down the kids with like the ear defenders and stuff, and it's like they get excited and stuff, but they don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, and seven's a good age for it. I mean, I'm sure if I have any kids, in the future, then it will be a similar sort of story. Yeah. But it's a nice thing that you can kind of, and this is the thing, like live football for me, it's about watching it, with my dad and with my granddad. There's a very sort of specific kind of thing all the way through to like now. When I go with granddad, and he takes about 1 million years to walk anywhere, bless him. But it's so I've got this really warped perception of how far everything is around the ground, because I never walk at full speed. But yeah, it's like it's a nice sort of family thing, and almost like, well, it's just kind of a nice male bonding thing that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily get. I suppose some people go fishing, some people do all sorts of stuff, but it's that's been the thing for us.
Yeah, I think that's really nice. Like, I find it fascinating how some people get their kind of origin stories of why they support their clubs and stuff. And I think it's so nice when there's it doesn't always have to be, but I think there's a really nice thing when it is a family tie, especially if, like, unlike lots of other people we've had on, you're going to quite a lot of games, and I guess we'll maybe get onto that later, where the lower leagues maybe are more accessible for people to go rather than Premier League prices and stuff as well. So that's all factors in it, but that's a really cool thing for family ties.
I mean, absolutely. And also, like, I suppose I think that there's more of a bonding thing about it when it's not necessarily like, it's not necessarily going to go your way. And I think that as a Millwall fan, you're always going into every game. Like, if you're playing someone at the bottom of the league, you're going, oh, this is a banana skin. We never play well against the bottom teams. If you're playing against a mid-table team, you go, oh, classic. We'll absolutely bin it against these guys. We might be able to grind out a draw. And then if you play someone at the top of the thing, you're like, do you know what? Maybe I could get a result. We can maybe get a result here. But I'm, if we don't, it's not too bad. So you're never actually thinking, oh yeah, we'll have them this time. Like, it's never like that. And because of that, like, growing up, I remember maybe being probably not around the age of 12, because we did quite well then, but during my sort of teenage years, sort of like the late noughties, I can remember thinking like, oh, this is fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course you can.
All right, yeah, it's fucking miserable. Like, you're just like, you're looking at it and you're thinking, my God, this is so bad.
Yeah.
But like, it's, you have to stick with it. And I think that's kind of, it bonds you with the people that you go and watch it, because it's like, actually then when things do go your way, it kind of pays off.
Cry on each other's shoulders and go very pessimistic. But is that why I guess that's why the highs are so high, right? Because when you're not expecting to get a result necessarily or something, then you can enjoy that happening.
Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, It must be, and that is like, stuff like that does bring you together. I played football when I was younger for a lot of years, and I got towards the end of my, I say career, like nothing special, but like went towards the end of my career, and I purposely moved to a team because some of my friends got to play in the lower league team of the same club, and I was like, well, I want to play with my friends every week because that's who I'm mates with in school and stuff. So I'd kind of done my whole like competitive streak, and actually then left that really crap club and then went to a higher one as my last season to be like, I can't go out like that. But we literally got spanked like 8-0 plus every week, and it was just demoralizing. But like when you did get something, you were like, the teamwork and the brotherhood brought you together. You're like, yeah, all right, this is
yeah, absolutely. I know exactly that vibe.
Cool. So we'll get into some of the more like fun questions, and again, this is going to be interesting because they might not be certain people that maybe people have heard of and stuff. But the next kind of ones I get onto is kind of like favorites of the club, if you will. So the first one I like to start off with is: do you have an all-time favorite Millwall player?
Do you know what? It's a really tough question.
Or a few. You can do a couple of mentions.
There are a few, but the thing is, if any Millwall fans who are watching this, one are probably thinking, who the hell's this guy? Because he's definitely doesn't sound like he's from South East London. But they also know exactly what I mean when I'm saying there are great players who have played for Millwall.
Yeah.
And there are great Millwall players. And Millwall players are a very kind of different thing to, your kind of technically brilliant players, because it's really easy for me to look at it and go, right, favorite Millwall players, you've got or like kind of like best players who played for Millwall. You've got people like Neil Harris, who's like a club hero for a number of different reasons, and I'll come and talk about him in a minute. You've got Steve Morrison, who did really well with us, like first time he was there, then played in the Premier League, played for Leeds, and then came back to us.
Yeah.
But then you've got like players like Tim Cahill, and like all of these amazing players from down the years who are amazing. But then you've got the players that are kind of like they bleed for the club, sort of players, and they're like, they're not necessarily the most brilliant players, but they will absolutely drag themselves through broken glass for the club. And those are the kinds of players that really get a great response when like actually at the Den. Because if you go to the Den, like it's amazing. I've never been in a football crowd that's as animated. Well, I suppose that's as animated as it's cynical. And if you're deemed to not be trying hard enough, you'll know about it very, very quickly. And it's astonishing how quickly things can turn. Like at the moment, for example, we've got a classic Millwall player in Murray Wallace, dubbed the Speyside Cafu because he's Scottish, but like he plays like left back, but he's fairly limited footballer, but he works his arse off. And also he's cropped up with some pretty special goals, like every now and again. Like he scored the winner against Everton in the when we beat him in the FA Cup final 3-2. FA Cup final, not the FA Cup final, sadly. The FA Cup quarter final, I think it was, or round of six. I can't remember. It was a knockout game.
It might have been quarters. I was quickly looking earlier, and I was looking through. I was like, I think it might have been quarters, because I was like, I didn't want to say it. I was like, the only final that I saw on there was my team, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, we've had quite a few knockout games down the years, so I'm entitled to get them mixed up. But no, and he scored in the last minute of that. So like, he's like a great Millwall player, and you got other players like Alan Dunn, Tony Craig, and probably like, Paul Robinson is another one that's like, he was a centre half who just, again, like he was a good footballer, but his degree of just absolute like drive and graft kind of made him stand out. That said, to answer your question properly, actually no, it's not even going to answer the question properly, because now I've got names just spinning up out of nowhere.
Keep going, it's fine.
I loved obviously watching Tim Cahill when he played for the club, because he was in that very special team that won the suppose it was the old second division. And not the old second division that, like, when your dad calls it the old second division, and he meant like the old second division. Yeah. This is before it was the Coca-Cola Championship, which is before it was the Championship, obviously. Yeah. But like, you know, we won that, and we had this wonderful like white kit with the crest and the old crest in the middle, which I much preferred to this, which I just think is, I'm not a big fan. We had like the Giorgio sponsorship, and we had like Sean Dyche at the back. We had, who else did we have? I think we had Neil Harris up top. We had so many quality players. Paul Eiffel, and yeah, he was kind of like this linchpin who just sort of, he grew in terms of his talent. So I mean, you know, realistically, it's got to be Timmy Cahill, but also Neil Harris. So that's a massive cop out. The big ramble.
I'll let
but
you
there's
take,
so many.
Both. Yeah. I mean, also it comes to my mind as well that you kind of touched on it from one player. Like, I guess from a club like Millwall, some of the more like Millwall-esque players, as you say, will be people that might not be the most technically gifted, but they tried the hardest and grafted. But they probably stayed there and they liked it there. When obviously lots of other people, as you were saying, you know, doing 2 stints or so, maybe loved the club, so they came back to the club, but they were always kind of setting their sights maybe a little bit higher on, if they get the Prem move, we're going to take the Prem move. And absolutely understandable. Like, you've had lots of players over the years, I'm sure, on your bench that have come at a lot younger age. I think I'm right in saying, was it Harry Kane, or have I got it completely wrong? That was
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I've kind of purposefully left him off my favourite players, because the thing is, like, he won Young Player of the Season in 2010, I think, for us, or there and thereabouts. And we had him and Chris Wood up top.
Yeah.
And I remember that was a season where it was like, we look pretty special here. And we sold Chris Wood to Leicester.
Yeah.
And Harry Kane went back, and it was one of those ones where it's like, Kenny Jackett had he got everything working. And I think with just a bit more investment, we could have pushed a little harder, and we wouldn't have had the decline that we did towards the middle of the past decade, where we had this really tough slump and like difficult period where you had managers like, you know, Steve Lomas coming in. They brought in a West Ham player. Like, come on. You know, everyone called him Agent Lomas because he'd been sent in to bring us down. And then we had Ian Holloway, who was good for about half a season.
Is Ian Holloway?
Found out the absolute clown that he is. And he was just, you know, just a strange bloke. And eventually got rid of him. Then they brought in Neil, who occupies such a brilliant like position in the hearts of every Millwall fan, because of, you know, I don't know if you know the story of like what happened with Neil Harris, but like no. He was our club top scorer.
Yeah, and he played for you.
We've not had many 20 goal a season strikers in our history. You can probably go back as far as Neil Harris, and probably the next one after that is Teddy Sheringham and Tony Cascarino, who both were banging in plenty of goals, like in the late 80s when we were in the old first division, so like the old Premier League, basically, where at Christmas we were top of the league, I think. But like, I think we beat United both times that season as well. That was before both our times. But I think like he was obviously this amazing striker that we had, young, tenacious, got what it was about. But then I think sort of in the mid noughties, he got diagnosed with testicular cancer, and so he had to start undergoing chemotherapy and all those kinds of treatment. Had the operation, and then came back to football, having lost his top scorer place for Millwall, and then went on to reclaim his top scorer position. And you know, he absolutely gives everything for the club, and that's why he's painted on the underside of the bridge. And even though, you know, he's now gone from the club and has managed other teams and stuff, there's still this kind of, you know, really strong affection for him within the club, that's kind of why he was like one of my top players, because it was like, well, I mean, it's hard not to like him.
But also that takes a special kind of like willpower and driving force anyway, to kind of lose that and you see it with players, and not even, we're talking normal injuries, not, you know, illnesses like that, most of the time they don't come back the same player, and to come back and then reclaim that, it takes a special kind of force. So that's a special player, and that's why you always will have a kind of affection for him like that. We'll get onto, so you've kind of gone from older players. I like to ask this as well because sometimes they throw up some really interesting ones. Do you have a favourite player from this season?
Like I do squad? Actually. And it's funny because we've had a few players who've been knocking around for quite a few years, because we tend to have, when the squad plays well, it's when we have players who have been there for quite a few years as these kind of linchpins, because that thing I was saying about the mentality of Millwall players, they show the other players who turn up what it means to play for the club and to understand the kind of club mentality. I think this season I've been so pleased to see Billy Mitchell come in from our academy, and he'd been sort of on the edge of the squad for a little while. He'd been coming in and playing right back every now and again, but he's been playing centre midfielder because he grew about a foot and put on about 20 kilos over the summer. Kind of came back. I think he's about 19 or 20 years old. He's really young, but he's just started to get this composure on the ball that we've lacked in recent years. He's quick. He's got that kind of turn of pace that means he doesn't have to make the flying tackles like some players within our team, because they can't get there on time. And also it's like he's got this kind of tenacity in the middle of the field, which you want to see. He's got his brilliant positioning, but also he started, and especially wasn't there at the start of the season, but in the last few games that I've been to watch, he's starting to pick up the ball, and instead of we're quite lucky in the fact that we've got quite speedy wingers. We've got players who can break a layer on the wing. So often, rather than trying to play it through the middle, we'll try and spin it out wide. And we play this kind of five at the back, 5 in midfield, sort of depending where the ball is. And then sort of it kind of rotates and changes. But we've got Jed Wallace on the wing, very, very speedy winger, who can break a layer. But instead of passing the ball, directly in front of him, you can't really see it, but like where he's running onto, he'll pass the ball through the line because he can see that Jed's already making the run. So he's actually picking out where he's going to run to, instead of, I'm going to pass it to your feet and then you'll have to kick it on.
Having the vision
every time. Exactly. It's just a little bit of vision. And I really think that if he continues to improve the game in the way that he has, he won't be with us for too long, even though he's a massive Millwall fan himself. So
I was literally going to say that. I was like, you touched on it, but I literally was going to ask, is that the fear though? If someone has a standout season or has slowly been progressing, is that the worry? You don't get too attached in a sense because you just know that it's inevitable, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult because you have to be realistic about the club. It takes, the club has to be right. I think I don't know if it's still the case. Certainly not when Wycombe we're in the league, I imagine. But we run on one of the lowest wage bills in the entire league. Now, if you think about the amount of clubs who come down from the Premier League, you get parachute payments and all that bollocks, fucking shite. Because it just means that if you look at that league, the majority of the teams have at some point been in the Premier League. Be that Blackburn. It was years ago that they were there. Even Derby yo-yoed for a bit. Then you've got obviously the usual suspects in, West Brom and Bournemouth and all those ones who kind of come up and down. So, you see us kind of operating on this much lower wage bill, and you think, well, how can you expect to hold people back who are, ultimately they have to make a living? And I think the hope is that you get to a position whereby they are a Millwall player, and you get someone like Steve Morrison, for example, who goes off, has his career, and then comes back and plays with you towards the end of the career. That said, it'd be lovely to string it all together and then get through the playoffs by chance. Because let's face it, we're never going to win the championship. I'd love it, and I'd be drunk for about 9 months if we did. But I think it would be very Millwall to scrape into the playoffs on the last day, as we did in League One in 2018, I think. 2018? Yeah. And then somehow go on to just do well and win. Because when it comes to knockout games, suddenly when you've got... Do you know what? every week we get maybe like 16,000 fans, but as soon as we get to a big game, you just see like the fans come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I've got a bit more to say about that later on when I know you're coming on to chat about things you don't like necessarily, because we never really make a good showing of ourselves when we go into those big games.
Yeah.
But, you know, I can remember when we got to the then equivalent of the Johnston's Paint Trophy final, which I think at that point was the auto windscreens shield or cup or something like that. We played Wigan in the final, and I can remember it was in the old Wembley Stadium, and it was like wall to wall Millwall fans. It was insane, and they had this like strip of Wigan fans.
Yeah,
and I remember saying to my dad, like, you know, I didn't know there were this many Millwall fans. He's like, not real ones.
Yeah,
like, yeah. But you know, it's because all the Palace fans show up when we do well, don't they? So fancy a bit.
It's starting.
I'm sorry. I'm getting towards the end of the Stella.
I mean, you make a really interesting point as well, because I've always said, and I will 100% always back this up. I actually had a rant yesterday about, we were talking Ballon d'Or yesterday on the Roundup review, and then we were talking about like how, like the leagues, which are the hardest leagues and stuff. But I have to say, not talking about like national leagues and stuff, but talking just in general, the Championship is the hardest league in the world. I don't care what anyone says, because there's so many factors involved. And one of them, as you've just said, must be so frustrating and piss you off, because you get a team like Norwich, I think I've touched on this before as well, when it was like, you get a team like Norwich, they're normally too good for the Championship because they've had players from the Prem or gone up and then kept most of their squad. But then they come down, they go up like they get battered, and they go, but that's okay because it's part of the plan. Parachute payments down, sell a few players, but keep most of their core squad, and then come and do it again. And it's either a season or a season 2 later, but then they're always in that parachute payment system, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing is, modern game is cynical, isn't it? And you've got like, there is a division between the kind of the haves and the have-nots, and then there's the, you know, obviously your super international brands or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, like, you've got clubs like Norwich, there's and you know, I suppose Brentford aren't really there. Brentford just implemented their whole kind of Moneyball sort of statistical approach, and they did away with their academy and stuff, which is like, you know, I admire clubs that are like, have got a clear direction.
Yeah.
And I will always, I take my hat off to anyone who supports Championship team, because it's tough going, and it's, everyone knows that they are within a shout, but everyone knows that this, if they screw it up, I mean, sometimes you need 50 points to stay up in the Championship, which is mad. And you know, you look at the implementation of these plans. It's like, and if it works, it's like, you've got a lot of time for that. Like Brentford had their plan. Norwich clearly have got their up and down plan. West Brom, you know, they're doing a similar sort of thing. Millwall have like they've had in recent years quite a specific plan in terms of buying kind of players that they're almost giving, either are Millwall players who have been there before, who get the club, who have some sort of tie, or they are players who have maybe screwed up and clearly have a bit of talent, but need a second chance.
Yeah.
And those kinds of players where it's like, if you're going to come, you've got to work for it and not piss about. And they know that it's their last chance. And it's worked so well. Like Jed Wallace was out of Wolves, and no one was going to give him a chance. We were like, yeah, all right. Obviously, you've got the Derby lad, Mason Bennett, who's kind of was involved with all that nonsense, who's come in, and he was just young and a bit misguided. He's been sort of turned around. You know, but then you combine that with when we had players like, you know, Steve Morrison coming back, clearly gets the club and stuff. So you build the team in that way. And I think there was a very conscious decision to get certain types of characters in with a bit of sort of fortitude and resilience. Like, you know, it doesn't really matter about, like, you know, whether you have your, to use the Peter Crouch podcast parlance, a Tip Tap Charlie or a Ham and Egger. It's more about, you know, the type of, whether you're willing to dig in, whether you're willing to absolutely give it all and run yourself into the ground for the club, because you get it. And then hopefully we have a few more like Billy Mitchell who come through, who just have a little bit more
extra.
And then I suppose the other layer on top of that is that you get and this was I always know when the club's doing well or when we're in with a chance, because the Premier League clubs will send us their loan players, and for years we didn't get any, and I was like, well, this is screwed. So we had like Harry Kane. I remember we had Benica Phobie the first time round.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lad who played for Spurs who played at right back. It was excellent. I can't even remember his name yet. We had Jay Simpson from Arsenal way back in the day. But there was like all sorts of very like random players. And then this season we got a lad called Shea Ojo from Liverpool, and that's, you know, for Liverpool to send us a player, I'd take that as a big old compliment. So
definitely,
you know, so that you know, when you layer all those kinds of things about your sort of like your base players who get it, your long-serving players, your kind of players who need a bit of a second chance, plus like your loan players, and that all of that kind of stacks up to sort of make almost like the Millwall blueprint, if you like. And that there'll always be a sort of a mix of that. But you need all of those bits in there for it to kind of to run properly.
But I guess, and then you're saying, so you knew all of that, but one of the most things is that it's like, if you're a Millwall player, you absolutely have to try and give it all, because that seems to be the bottom line of everything you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, you know, you're there's a Paul Robertson quote where he basically describes playing for Millwall as this is going to be a really bad misquote, but he describes it as you have to give it 100%, because you're doing it for people who are looking on, who would do anything for your life, who hate their job, you know, or don't, you know, that the people, he basically understood like that everyone who plays for Millwall has to get the fact that ultimately you are in such a privileged position, and you're playing in front of, you know, however many thousands of people, all of whom
would hard-working money,
pull the jersey on. Exactly. They'd pull the jersey on immediately if given the chance. So,
absolutely,
you know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think there's lots of managers over there that over the years have been like, it's that sentiment. And I think most people, if they could envision themselves as a manager, they'd be like, you literally need to run until your lungs burst. Like, that's the point. That's the very least you're expecting from a player that's getting paid good wages to play football for a living. So, I mean, we've got onto favourite players and stuff. So the next one I want to talk about is favourite goal of all time for the club.
Well, because I had a bit of a think about this one, because again, it's really hard to pin it down to just one, because there are so many occasions that I just think, and you know, it's funny even talking to you now, like more have been sort of come into the fore. Like I think the one where, you know, we spoke a bit about Neil Harris and him coming back from his cancer treatment and overcoming that illness, and he had sort of played a little bit, but then in sort of reserve games and stuff, was just coming back, and then I believe it was on New Year's Day in 2002, he came on against Watford and took the ball from just inside our own half, took it round one or two players and sort of cut inside and pinged one into the side netting, which was just like this insane thing to have done, given what had just happened, to still be like, I'm back. And then, you know, every player, including the goalkeeper, are just over there, and they literally like hoist him into the air. You know, and it's rare that you see someone lifted above other players. You know, in football, it's quite an unusual celebration. And I think it's personally, we don't have any statues outside the ground, but I would make a statue of that. Yeah, like I would say that should be the statue.
I mean, that's a powerful moment, right? Like, like coming back from that and then just being like, and him being like, one, as we said, like the determination and the power and stuff, but also the balls and the ego to come back and be like, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go for it and be like, I've done that. And then to celebrate that way is a really nice thing. For clarity, Jack sent me a couple of amazing videos to watch before we did this as well, which I'm glad to see some of the absolute screamers that I'm sure we'll talk about. So that's really good to see.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you've got a way of getting them up on the video, but like they are really worth looking up. The next one for me, which is, I think it's probably the best screamer I think I've ever seen. And I didn't have the best seat to watch it, but I was there when it happened at Wembley against Scunthorpe in the, I think it must have been either 2009 or 2010. We played against Scunthorpe in the playoff final to get out of League One, which just like getting out of League One is like crawling out of a pit. It's so hard, because you're always there against clubs. So it's like, well, you're playing against Scunthorpe. Again, Scunthorpe aren't a really small club. And you play against teams like Bradford, etc. as well. But like Gary Alexander, who was pretty decent forward, but like, nothing insanely special, manages to volley at the ball from about 35, 40 yards out, across the keeper in the final. And obviously we didn't actually win that game in the end. And I remember being incredibly cut up, but amazing goal all the same. And then I think you've got probably the other kind of 2, 3. That's 3. I'm going to pick one at the end because I'm thinking about it as I do.
Yeah, all good.
But like, you've also got the one that everyone said was offside, the playoff final goal for Steve Morrison, the goal at the back stick where it had been crossed in, and it was perfect for that season because one, we had a fantastic kit. The blue and white stripes I loved because it was a throwback to it was actually a throwback to our unbeaten run in the 60s. I think it was 66, 67. We had a like an unbeaten run that was the previous longest in the club's history, and we went on to, I think, equal it in that season where we had the kit again. We had a strike partnership of Lee Gregory and Steve Morrison, and Gregory nudged it over with his head for Steve Morrison to finish, and obviously it was 85th minute of the game, and I was there with my dad, and a couple of like sort of family friends or whatever. Granddad couldn't make it that time, I don't think, or could he? Was he there? He must have been there. Yeah, he was definitely there, but he was sort of sat. But yeah, I remember the place going absolutely ballistic, which was just amazing because it was like finally, after all these years of it just being absolute crap, we're finally back in into the championship, which is, then you're not going to like, and no disrespect to like some of the clubs that do have it, but like, we grew up obviously near Aldershot Town.
Yeah.
Like that's that's the sort of level of stadium you're going to play in if you're in League One sometimes, because no disrespect to that, it's like that is the kind of intersection, if you like, and obviously big up Aldershot Town, like they're definitely in my roster of clubs that I look out for. But yeah, I just think it was like, right, we're back where we should be, and of course always great to cross paths with Charlton on the way down to Lou lads.
But
I suppose what my favorite one outside of that, obviously I've mentioned the Murray Wallace one, but I mean, I think purely actually no, because I've not mentioned the Tim Cahill one in the Sunderland game again, where to send us through to the FA Cup final. Yeah, no, I've got goosebumps now just thinking about that. So it's got to be that one.
It's had the reaction.
Like, oh man, it's still. I was watching the video earlier and I was completely covered in goosebumps.
The goals that really do it, like, for you, give you that exact thing. So I haven't actually. I'm going to do my club episode of myself, and I'm going to get someone else to do it, because obviously why not? I want to talk about mine. But for club and country, like, my favourite goal does the exact same thing. So I won't say what the United one was, but I'm sure most people can probably guess. But like the England one is quite obviously and it's probably, I'd actually say, my favorite goal of all time over my club one, which is the Greece free kick. Like how can that not be? Like, because even just hearing that commentary gives me goosebumps. Like, and it was an anniversary of it recently, and there was a video of Bex watching it, and I was just like, just there, like I can like vividly, I'm like, I can picture where I was when it happened, everything about it. Yeah, it's classic. But all of the goals. Go on,
No,
go on.
I was just going to say the thing about that goal as well that was so special. It's like it's underneath all of the great goals. There's like a bit more of a story or whatever, and that one in particular, Beckham had been absolutely rinsed in the press for years. Everyone was saying, "Oh, he's a prima donna. He doesn't care," all this kind of stuff, and then just like that, bang, redemption.
Yeah,
like from that point onwards.
Now it's like like knighthood, doing all this other stuff, like the face of football. But it's ridiculous. Like, but yeah, I guess it was such an important goal as well, and that sometimes plays a factor into sometimes people's favorite goals, because it might not be like winning something, but it might be getting you to the final or doing whatever, and that. But it tends to build that hype up around the occasion. But I was going to say, all of the goals that we've mentioned, I highly recommend. I don't think I can put them on here for copyright issues, but like, by all means, pause the video and go watch them, especially that the one against Scunthorpe is an absolute worldie.
You're gonna have to put the links in the
I could do that. Yeah, I could probably do that.
Yeah,
because some of them are like quality goals. So
also it's quite nice watching goals that are like, where it's like the Neil Harris one, especially because it's kind of it's like around the 2000s. The nostalgia dust. It's like, love it.
Like
baggy shirts.
Different vibes, and also you're like, what definition is this camera? It's not even standard def, it's whatever was below.
Potato definition.
Literally. But kind of from favorite goals, and it might be linked into you, so it could be the same thing or it might not be at all. But I like to ask, and again, by all means, mention a couple on here, but I like to ask, like, do you have like, you can give me an overall answer at the end, but like, do you have a couple of favorite memories for your club? And it could be anything to do with like your family going, it could be goals, matches, anything you like.
I mean, I think the whole of the cup run in 2003-04, I was really fortunate because I got to go to, from the round of 16 against Burnley, I went to every game except the Tranmere replay. And that was it Burnley in the round of 16, or was it? Oh, I'm probably getting that wrong now, which is terrible. I should know that. But like,
I mean, to be fair, you've been to so many games. Like, I think we can let you off on the
I mean, that's the thing at home. If this was at my parents' house, I'd be boring you with like, and here's a program from 2004. Because I've still got like I think, let's just cut back to what you're saying. Favorite memories. I can very specifically say that my absolute favorite and probably most painful feeling as a Millwall fan was the obviously the goal when we played against Sunderland at Old Trafford, which is like, it's insane to think they used to do the games at like neutral locations, which is awesome. You're there. We filled out a whole half of Old Trafford, which was just
insane,
bonkers. And I can remember we were down on the same side as the dugout, like right down almost like at pitch level, towards our own goal. So the goal happened at the other end. Obviously everything went mental, and I can remember Tim Cahill running down. He runs down whirling his shirt, and he stopped just in front of us, and like Andy Marshall comes over and gives him a big hug. And that was obviously insane, but they announced 5 minutes added time at the end, and I can remember my granddad, who was like, I think he must have been in his sort of late 70s then, not the healthiest of chaps, bless him. I could heard him lean across to my dad, and I was about 12 years old or something at the time. I wasn't very old at all, maybe 12, 13. And go, fuck me, son, I'm not sure I'm going to make it. And I remember seeing him go, it was like this kind of tension as it all just went kind of and we've been so loud all game, pure silence, as it was like trying to withstand this pressure from Sunderland, who were technically the better side. But then at the end they played and they still play it at the ground to this day, and I can't remember them ever playing it before this, but they play Status Quo, rocking all over the world, which is just so corny. But like, they played that when we won. And I can remember looking around and seeing just like the hardest men like Millwall fans are a funny bunch. They are hard as fuck for the most part, apart from me, and everyone without exception
crying,
bawling their eyes out, just like like people hugging strangers. Like my granddad I'd never seen my granddad cry. I've never seen my dad cry actually until that point, and they're just both bawling. And the thing is, I remember my dad being like, he's like, you don't bloody understand this, do you? He's like, I've had to wait years. He's like, I had to watch so much shite to get this, and you waltz up, and within a few years you're watching them get to the final. And then I can't remember who United beat to get into the final, but I think it was it after we had that game then had to be decided next. And I remember thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, it could be.
Man United in the final. I mean, that was special. I mean, like, that's obviously one memory.
Yeah.
Then I also remember, because I was lucky enough to go to the final. My only regret is that it was in Cardiff and not in Wembley, which would have been great.
Millennium Stadium,
yeah. But I think that game, I wish I could remember more of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember, I can remember Ruud van Nistelrooy's, was he the third goal? I think he was. Really, smashed it or whatever. I can remember Cristiano Ronaldo doing about 900 stepovers, and then he went round Robbie Ryan and Rabona crossed it.
Yeah.
And I can remember all the Millwall fans going, "Oh, fucking hell, he's good." Oh.
And all shouting, but like, Jesus Christ, he's good.
Yeah, everyone was like, yeah, what a wanker, but fucking hell. Yeah. But then again, you look at it and you think, right, we lost 3-0 in the, and I think the first goal went in, we lasted a good 40 minutes or something without
it was literally, I watched it a minute ago, it's literally 2 minutes before half time that it went in.
Right.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, exactly. There you go. Because I remember it been a real, like, we put up a really robust, like, as you'd expect from any team managed by Dennis Wise, Ray Wilkins, like that. What a combination. Like, obviously Wilkins, like the brains behind the operation, and Wise just subbing himself on to go and cause havoc. But like that midfield that we played against the United team that had Keane, Giggs, Scholes and Ronaldo. Insane. It's amazing. And, it's the sort of stuff that as a kind of, before that had happened, it was like, oh, that's fantasy land.
Yeah.
But so that whole day was amazing. I can remember like fans playing five-a-side against each other like outside, and I can remember crying my eyes out for 45 minutes straight for the second half, and my dad being like, "You need to understand that we were never going to win this."
Just enjoy the players you're seeing, enjoy the game, the day. Yeah, exactly.
But I also remember there being an absolute uproar in the Millwall end, because the tradition at the FA Cup final is that the winning team take the cup round and they get, so that the away fans, generally speaking, will applaud. And the United team never took it to the Millwall end.
Yeah.
And I remember all the Millwall fans, like around us anyway, were like,
just disrespectful.
It's like, we because they would get stick probably, but like at the same time,
it's traditional.
It's it's kind of traditional, like, and I think that we had been beaten fair and square, really, by what was, objectively a much better side, with some of the greatest players of all time in it. Yep. So you kind of go, well, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, like that whole cup run was phenomenal, and I've had lots of other very happy memories with it. Like, coming back for the first game after COVID, the restrictions were lifted, and I took my granddad down, and we watched the game. And obviously, very limited numbers in there where you could go if you're a season ticket holder. So we got in. I remember they played Let Them Come as they come out, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah,
I was like, this is, and it's like right there, and I was like. And I looked to my left, granddad's just gone. It's just pure ball in his eyes.
And especially for a season ticket holder, that must have been so weird, like having most of your weekends like taken up and then just nothing, all locked in, and then actually getting back to it must have been such a wave of just everything, nostalgia, relief, everything hitting you. Like,
absolutely. And like my granddad's 86 now. He's, and he lives by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, it was like, he's coming back out of just being completely isolated. He couldn't go around and see him for like, months. He was just, by himself. And so to go back, be around people, seeing what he loves. And like, as you say, it's every weekend. Like I'm usually dragging myself there through a disgusting hangover, but like, that's part of it. And you kind of, you get there, but like to kind of, that was like the first taste of normality coming back, So that's probably the other one that I'd say, but yeah, loads of very happy memories.
No, and one thing I wanted to point out as well, sorry, was that just two things on that FA Cup game, and I'm not trying to, one of them isn't trying to gloat, I just wanted to point out something that one of them was that it's actually a very important game for Ronaldo as well, because that was his first trophy he ever won at United. But that's, the start of that. It just, to say incredible doesn't do justice, like that career that he's had, which is unreal. But also, like, to go on your point of how you actually gave a very, very good side a good run-in. Like, I was watching it back and I didn't even remember it. Like, Roy Keane is covered in blood from his cheek and his eyebrow, where they've just absolutely been going at each other in midfield. Like, so Millwall did a good display of trying to represent what hard-working team.
You'll have to send me the link to that, because I don't think I've rewatched it since.
It was I think it must have been an MUTV. I can tell by the commentators highlights of it, and I was like 8 minutes.
Oh God, right. So it's going to be, I'll have to wade through the bias, but I have seen like a video going around of like every one of Ronaldo's touches, and one of them it's Dennis Wise hitting him at hip height, like 2-footed, bang.
I mean, this highlights was 8 minutes long, and I actually saw another one. There is just a Ronaldo compilation of that game on YouTube currently. So exactly. And it was in peak Ronaldo time, when it was like, I'm going to do 700 step overs. But as you said, like just the audacity to just do the Rabona cross and be like, oh yeah, well, it didn't work out, but it was just him at the time, wasn't it? So exactly. Anyway, so I think the next two questions are quite mute with you, but we'll go through them anyway. So normally I like to ask them because I like to get into the whole like ticket pricing and all that kind of stuff. But so we'll go for it anyway. But like, so the question I have written down is, do you go to games regularly? Well, clearly, season ticket holder, and since you were 7 is quite a feat anyway.
Well, not a season ticket holder since I was 7. When I moved, much to my dad's dismay, back to London after university. And my I've been going with my granddad ever since. So almost every home game, I would say.
Yeah, and then I normally talk about like, when did you last go and stuff, but I'm assuming the last home match.
Yeah, we had to move this, didn't we?
Yes, it was the Bournemouth game, wasn't it?
Yeah, supposed to be a week earlier, but I went to watch a gritty 1-1 draw, which was a cracking game, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, it should have. I had a tenner on 2-1 at 11s, and I was there a couple of times the ball flashed across goal, and I thought, bloody hell. But 1-1, that's our score this season. So yeah, it was literally last week that I went with my dad rather than my granddad.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess to touch on, we can still touch on a few points and stuff. Like, obviously, I mean, you can put your 2 cents in it about, like, 'cause normally when we talk about this, and every single person I've had on it so far has been a Premier League club, and they've all said exactly the same thing, regardless of, some of them are like me and a bit more of a journey than some people to see their clubs, but some people aren't like horrendous, but they've all said the same thing. Like, they're just being priced out. Like, they didn't go till a lot older age because, families back then just couldn't afford ridiculous prices, especially if it wasn't just one ticket. You've got to think about who was taking you, another family or brothers and sisters. And it just becomes a thing. Obviously, I don't know how much a Millwall season ticket is, but I'm sure it's relatively competitive compared to other clubs. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, it's cheaper to go and watch Dulwich Hamlet's, mind, but like, it's if you compare it to the absolute fiasco that is being an Arsenal fan, for example, and I've been fortunate enough to go to a couple of Arsenal games over the years because one of my best mates is a Gooner. You compare the fiasco of trying to get those tickets versus ours. I mean, you can usually pick up a ticket on the day. I think you're probably going to pay about, for an adult ticket, you're going to be looking at about 30 odd quid. 35, 40 quid. It depends on the team you're playing.
Yeah.
Our season tickets sort of mid 400s, which is actually outrageous value.
Yeah.
When you consider like, you know, what you get for it. And then I've only ever been to one away game, and that cost me about, well, I say one away game, but like I mean to another team stadium, and that was, I went to see us play Tottenham, and I think it was the quarterfinal of the FA Cup where we got spanked 6-1. Very difficult, unpleasant game that I'll probably talk about in a bit, but like that cost me about 60 odd quid.
Yeah.
So like that's still a lot of money. That's a serious dent.
Yeah.
But like generally speaking, you know, you get quite cheap kids tickets, and the kind of normal tickets for a standard game, pretty good value.
Yeah.
And I know you can pick up a half season ticket for very, very good value as well. And I think that's something the club consciously tries to do, because they understand that, like, you know, there's a real mix, you know, people come from all walks of life, but like generally speaking, people that it's not the sort of, you know, the most affluent sort of fan base. It's not like you know, some clubs which go unnamed, where it's, you know, all you know, a little bit more fancy. So
and absolutely, like that's and it is the point, because, you know, as you're saying, that price point is, you know, it's still a lot of money, absolutely, but it's like compared to some price you're saying, and I was actually going to say even Arsenal obviously were top now, but obviously Chelsea in their recent news have taken the piss even more, because they were saying that, I don't know which stand it could be South Stand, that could be wrong, one of their new stands has gone from £1,800 to £3,900 for a season ticket. That's it.
I know,
£4,000.
Imagine paying that much and having to watch Chelsea for the pleasure. I'm all right.
I can use that a lot better, trust me. But like, you know, and I saw that being posted from one of my mates who was a diehard Chelsea fan, and he's just like, he was already like, it was impossible. He was like, you know, I went to very few games. I've started going to a lot more since I'm older and been earning and all that kind of stuff. And that's absolutely fine. But he was saying that he was just like, it's an absolute joke. And that's the problem. They're pricing people out of football. I know you probably don't want me to say that name and you've already done it once, but like Brentford, for example, they obviously this week announced that they're going to be doing the shirt for 2 seasons again, and not doing that. And it's stuff like that makes football affordable. Yeah, exactly. Because you know, you get sucked into that, and it's, you know, you shouldn't be necessarily like, I am a bit of a sucker for a shirt collection for my club, and I like to get one every season. But it is a lot of money that you're spending if you're getting the latest one with a number and delivery and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy.
Absolutely. I mean, it's and also they are extortionately expensive, especially like, you know, if you're a teenager, you're not fitting in the junior shirts. You've got to get a man's one, and so you're going to be paying 50 odd quid. The thing is, 50 odd quid, that's for a Millwall shirt. But like, you know, if you want a United shirt,
I can tell you how much
silly money. Yeah.
So
God, how much is it?
A new shirt every year. So I tend to get the red home kit with a player print on the back, which is obviously extra money. I don't bother with the Premier League badge or anything like that. Like just the name on the back, and then paying for the postage, because that isn't free even buying a shirt. It's usually about 85 quid.
That is just, you know,
outrageous.
That's mad, isn't it? And you kind of go, well, you know, what's the point? It's funny though, because I'm a massive sucker for a shirt as well. And the thing is that they know that people are.
Yep.
And like in recent years, I've been sort of seeking out, you know, I've got most of my clothes are in storage at the moment because I'm in the middle of moving house. But like two that I managed to pick up 1988-89 kind of shirt from I mentioned earlier about when we topped the first division, the Tony Cascarino, Teddy Sheringham shirt, that has Lewisham Council as the sponsor with the crown on it.
Classic.
Which is just so good. Like, and a great sponsorship makes a shirt.
Absolutely.
Like we've got a pretend chocolate drink as ours at the moment.
Same as McLaren F1 team.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly whoever was going for the sponsorship deals ran out of money. Like, right, we got McLaren. Great, love that. Who next? Well, it's another M. Millwall. Right, okay. Not sure about that. But like,
it does.
It makes
it like it's a good sponsor.
We had like my first ever Millwall shirt was a red with like, it was the third kit with the thin black stripes, and our greatest, personally greatest sponsor for me, Captain Morgan's Rum. Like, that's so good. Like, I miss boozy sponsorships. And like that, and then my other shirt that I would have worn today had I had my stuff, was my dad gave me his I think it's like 1965. Mate, it's like a 90s, it's either 5 or 9, because it's not got the stripes on it. Like pure white. Even with like the old like 1960s, because it was the original one, so it's like 1960s collar that comes up a little bit, and the old crest, and it's just plain white, and it's like, it is thick. It's like
proper material.
It's like what rugby shirts were made out of until like 2001 or something.
And it does. A sponsor totally makes it. But that's the thing. Like, when it comes to your club, there is, you'd be like, favorite kits or worst kits, and it's all that stuff that brings it in and stuff. So I guess the last 3 questions, I always tend to like put them all into one, but kind of let you go on some of them. So they are. I'll kind of go through them, and then we can talk about them however you want. So I always put like, is there anything you don't like about your club? And I put like, i.e. fans, owners, manager, whatever it is. Then it's always like, where do you see your club in 5 to 10 years? And then it's, is there anything you want to say to fellow fans? So I maybe will pick out of that one the future question first, and then we'll maybe go into maybe some negatives, and then you can finish on a thing. So we're like, in a realistic world, and I know you're quite realistic on your perception of football most of the time as well. And and as you said, it can be quite a pessimistic view as a Millwall fan. In 5 or 10 years, are you seeing yourself in the same kind of situation, or are you seeing something different?
I mean, obviously, it's difficult because obviously the memes at the moment are all about pondering the orb, and like that is what football fan doesn't sort of turn the kind of like the dream situation over of like, this time in 10 years, like 10 years ago, back from now, we were really sort of like scraping at doing it. And often I think the realistic person within me says, we'll have another push in the next sort of year or two, where we sort of, Billy Mitchell might come up a bit more, pick up another couple of good players, really start to build something a little better, depending on if Rowett can do it. Because I think at the moment he's just going for like a sort of contain and then push when we can strategy. I think that really we may be able to push in the next kind of, in 5 years, we may push. If we go up, I'm being completely honest, I reckon we'll come straight back down. Be very difficult for us to sustain ourselves in the Premier League unless we invested incredibly heavily. And we've got a fantastic owner in John Berylson, an American guy who's involved with a lot of sport anyway, but kind of gets the club and has really put a lot of money into it and really invested over the years. And I think, despite being this kind of, not very Millwall kind of guy and being this kind of flash American, he gets it, and he's been sort of like very careful with the way that he's run the club, and we've been a very well-run club for years. So I think the realist in me says it's going to continue being a bumpy road, but we'll stay here and hereabouts. But brackets, I mean, it'd be bloody great if we did manage to somehow punch our way up. But being a Millwall fan is an exercise in sort of bobbing and weaving and sort of scrapping and punching maybe just slightly above our weight, which really the top half of the championship is punching above our weight. We are a mid to low table championship team. And financially that's where we kind of sit. So I'd like to see things improve, but I really do think that we're operating at our sort of capacity, peak without a significant amount more of investment at this point.
I think that's a very realistic look at it. And as you said, if a few more things happen, then you said you might make a push and see what happens. And unless you get any kind of crazy Newcastle level of investment, nothing ridiculous is going to happen in the next 5 years or so.
I mean, but that said, Championship's a funny old league, and talking more broadly about the Championship, lots of people who follow Premier League clubs won't really kind of see this as much. But if you string together 5 wins in the Championship, you can jump from sort of mid-low table into the playoff positions very quickly. There's always a team that will run away with it at the top, and there'll be about 3 or 4 that are fighting. And those bottom 2 playoff positions could be
open for anyone. They're open for literally most of the league, aren't they? At that point at the bottom.
Yeah.
So
you got 2. It's basically like you call them like the form places in the playoffs, and like if you hit form in the final sort of 8 games of the season, there's no reason to say that you couldn't do it. So I'm still holding out hope.
Well, we will see. That's the beauty, and also that's the beauty of football, isn't it? It's you never know what's going to happen around the corner, and you'll go in there with a hope, whether that's reserved hope from a Millwall fan or not, that something's going to happen. So we'll get on to the next one, which is maybe the more negative, and we'll end, or maybe could be negative, could be positive, that last one. But is there anything that you don't like about your club? And it can literally be anything.
I mean, I think no fan is entirely happy with their club.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's just kind of the way that it is. I think that they're, from my perspective, what's very difficult is usually when you say you're a Millwall fan, most people be like, "Oh, Millwall, you're a racist, then, aren't you?" And I don't think that they're I don't think it's like a majority of the Millwall fans who are kind of prejudiced. And I don't think that in the same way that we've got this kind of reputation for the 1970s and the 80s with the whole bushwhackers and stuff like that, like all the violence surrounding it, down to the point where my granddad says he can remember in the 70s there being a group of fans who used to wear surgical masks and white coats and slash people with cutthroat razors and stuff like that. And you just think, my God, like, I think down the old den, things were like, before I was born, things were like very different. And naturally, like, there's always been this sort of aggro. But I think that the difficult thing, and there are, I think a lot of those guys, they're just old now and they're knackered. There are people who still want to have a bit of a dust up or whatever, and there are certain parts of the stadium where you can see like they're not really watching the game, they're just there to shout at the other fans. Hey, who am I to tell people what to do? Like I go to the game and I shout myself hoarse, getting out the the demons from being at work all week.
It's the therapy.
Why we do it, but like exactly. But it's like there are a lot of people who, and I think it's actually, do you know what? Cutting back, I think when we get into those bigger games that I've been talking about, that these amazing occasions where we maybe play against a Premier League team, where we string together a run of games where it's like, right, we've beaten 3 Premier League teams in the FA Cup, and we're going on to do the next one or whatever. And you get, particularly when we go to Wembley and suddenly we're allowed to have 30,000 or something in the stadium. I think when you go over 20,000 at Millwall, you get people who come in because they fancy a bit, and they're not the real fans, because they're sure as hell like they weren't there in 2013 or whatever in February watching Peterborough in like 2-degree weather, freezing in in the start of the year, and it's like you're watching us draw 0-0 with this absolute crap, and it's like, God, why do we do this? But like they do turn up for the big glory days, and they're the fans. And the thing is, it's not like most Millwall fans are just normal blokes. They're just people trying to get on with it. But there's a lot who would just be like, who are in it for for the reputation or whatever. And that basically gets you into situations like, where I was in Cornwall in Newquay with my dad when we were in the, I think we were in the semi-final of the FA Cup in maybe 2013 against Wigan. And we got beaten in that game. And me and my dad had gone out to watch it. And I had worn my shirt. And I remember my dad being like, "What the bloody hell are you playing at? Why are you wearing your shirt?" I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch the game."
Yeah.
And we went to walkabout, and place wasn't particularly heaving, as you can imagine, but there was a stag do in there, consisting mostly of West Ham fans.
Yeah.
And they tried to jump me and my dad.
Jesus.
No, my dad's not. He was like, he was over 50 at that point. And I was in my final year of uni, and like not particularly a sort of like a big or imposing chap at 5'8". Like it's and they had two blokes follow me in the toilet and try and bloody intimidate me, and then like they started surrounding us and like trying to basically sort of shoving us and stuff. And you're in this situation where you're having to be like, me and my dad had to work our way out of the situation, which isn't great, and you don't want to have to do that, especially not against multiple blokes. And the thing is, that wasn't because of who we were, that's because of the fact that you see you wearing the scarf, and they think you're up for it, and you have that kind of conversation. When in actual fact, we've got a club that's, you talk about things you don't like about the club, and okay, there's that I'm talking more specifically about some of the cultural elements around it. There's this that I don't like about, sometimes I don't like Gary Rowett's very sort of turgid approach to certain games where you should be more attacking. Great, whatever. But like that aside, you've got these kind of difficult cultural elements, but then what things that I do like about, and actually I'd be remiss if I wasn't to mention as well, the thing that I just was like bleak for me was when all the players took the knee after coming back from COVID, and all of the I say all of the fans, it wasn't all of the fans, there was so many fans loudly booing, and I just remember looking around like in this absolute dismay, and being like, what the fuck is this? And you can't, it's really hard to kind of be the person who goes, what the fuck are you doing? Because that's what I wanted to do, but I'm ashamed to say I'm not brave enough. Because and you go, but like the thing is, and they're there going, oh, it's because they're fucking communists, aren't they? And you're like, well,
no.
If you're willing to do that many mental backflips,
exactly.
to think that these very well paid individuals are all Marxists and not just own up to the fact that you think it might be just a bit racist. It's terrible. So like that kind of stuff, that stuff that I really don't like. But then you flip it. For years, Millwall have been at the forefront of Kick It Out, about kind of trying to fight racism in football. At the same time, there's also like, we won Family Club of the Year, I think a few years running very recently, for the work that we do in the community, but also for kind of younger fans. Like they've got a whole section of the stand called Zampa's Family Club, Zampa being the Millwall Lion mascot. Where you can go there and it's like, it's for kids. And if you don't want your kids to be hearing the fruity language that you might hear elsewhere, then you can go there, and there's, you won't have like some of the stuff that you might see elsewhere in the States.
That's a really nice initiative, though.
I mean, like, and they had to put those sorts of things in, and they do an unbelievable amount of work in the community and stuff. And you just go, well, actually,
which people don't hear or see about, because why would it be publicized, the good stuff?
Well, exactly. Why would you ever promote that kind of stuff? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that does fit the narrative, and every time they pick up on it, and it's and it becomes this kind of this thing within the press. But you compare it with some of the stuff that they do, and you go, well, actually, this is a club that is truly built around community and holds together a large section of people, myself included, who have one thing in common, and that is usually a geographical ancestral tie to the area. That they know, because basically people have fucked off to Essex, people have fucked off to Kent, people have like my dad have moved out into Hampshire, but we've and people like my granddad still live, not even really in the area anymore, but like near enough. But like if you go back a generation from my granddad, you got people living all around Bermondsey, and that's where everyone would go back to for Christmas. So you have this kind of this shared link, which they do an unbelievably good job of kind of perpetuating. And as a club, a lot of the a lot of the people who are kind of very involved with it, very vocal, are great at sort of perpetuating that. And I feel a lot of pride in it, and I love being part of it. Like, I really, really do. It feels like this kind of, the whole like no one likes us, we don't care thing. It's that kind of backs to the wall, like underdog spirit. And that kind of, it's weird because it sounds a bit lofty, but like I feel like it has definitely shaped me as a person, and like the way that I am and my sort of like mentality. And that I'm sort of waffling a load of nonsense now, but like it really does it. I feel like it's definitely sort of that kind of backs to the wall mentality, that drive, the fact that you can get results against the odds. I think a lot of Millwall fans take that with them into their lives, and you just kind of fight for not necessarily what you believe in or anything as lofty as that, but it's just like, doing what you can with what you're given. And it's a it's a good thing. And I get a lot of enjoyment in the small moments where I get to enjoy it for the long periods of quite extended bouts of misery. But that's that's football.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on some of the stuff you said about like the way people perceive the club and things like this, because obviously we touched on it in the Chelsea episode, where Chelsea are kind of the Premier League seen as the racist club, and it's we were talking about on there exactly not even to the extent that Millwall are doing, so that's a credit to your club, but like things that they were doing to change that, and they're actually like, it's if obviously there is still some, but it's such a small proportion compared to most of the fans. And yes, they can have a loud voice at times, but they're rooting, they're rooting out the clubs, and with the campaigns that we've got going on for taking the knee, but not even that, from just people in the club not willing to listen to it and take that anymore. It is shaping the way of football. And also I don't blame you at all. I talked on a previous podcast about standing up to this kind of stuff, but you also in a Millwall situation might be for more of an extreme example, like you probably can't stand up to that many fans that are doing it, and and also you're putting yourself in danger then, and it's not because you don't believe in what you're trying to stand up for, but you also have to think about your own safety in these situations as well. So that's a very real factor.
Well, I mean, you kind of have to weigh up the thing in your mind. Like, if I'm stood there next to my 86-year-old granddad who, he needs help. He needs help climbing up the stairs to get to the seats where he sits, and some bloke drops me. What's he going to do?
Yeah.
And God forbid granddad would, revert to type and try and have him himself, which would probably be the end of it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, God forbid something happened to, like, even it wasn't necessarily an accidental swing at your granddad stuff. No idea the impact that could have on him as well. So absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about. So you have to think outside of, what, and say I saw red and I was like, well, do you know what? You are wrong and you're a piece of shit. And I try and jump at the bloke. We have a fight. I get shit kicked out of me. Or I land a punch, he falls over, smacks his head.
Yeah,
what's that going to achieve?
Exactly.
No, this is the point. It's like, for the whole, like, was it Bill Shankly quote where it's like, oh, it's it's much more important than life and death. It's like, obviously he was saying that jokingly, and that's the thing. It isn't. It matters at the time, but then it doesn't, and that's why that's why it's that's why it's so brilliant, is because it matters so much, and can affect you in such huge ways, and it can be a vehicle for like such incredible change and messages and stuff. But ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, it's not like it isn't life or death, and that's why it's nice, because you kind of go, feel crap about it, but you know what, in the morning I'll feel a bit better. That said, on the flip side, when I do feel amazing about it, it's days and days of it, isn't it? So
of course,
you only have to look at the summer.
True. I mean, but the point I think I want to make here is that, like, even talking about those awards that you've won and the younger kid section stuff as well, that's all stuff that the listeners and or the watchers, depending how you're getting this content, like, they won't have heard about that. I guarantee you 99% of them, and that's just a really nice story to show that there is change on the horizon, and it is old stereotypes, as you said, that can leak down, like, as you said, you going to support your club just by wearing your colours somewhere completely neutral to any of the clubs, and then having stuff started because of a certain stereotype is a ridiculous thing. I mean, have you got anything else you want to touch on there, or should we jump on to kind of the last question?
No, go for it.
So the last question is a very open-ended question, actually. So this is you can take it any way you want. You can keep it negative, you can go positive, anything in general. Right. I said it once before about the question is there anything you want to say to your fellow fans? I do say this on the end, but you know, I've asked this question and someone's response literally was don't. And they were like, I said, you know, or if someone was looking to become a fan and they were in the Millwall area and they were going to become a Millwall fan, one of the other clubs that I asked them was like, what would you say if they wanted to be a fan? And the person was like, don't, like, just save yourself the trouble. So you might have kind of a similar response. I don't know. But yeah, do you want to say anything to anyone, any fellow Millwall fans, or even just the perception of Millwall maybe?
No, do you know what? It's funny when you say about like fans saying don't become a fan.
Yeah.
I actively recruit. Like if someone's not into football, like I you know, I've got a mate, Franco, who lives in Cordoba in Argentina, who's got a Millwall shirt. He has one of these. Exactly. And I've got one of his Boca shirts from when I went out there. And you know, he appreciated the kind of gutsy sort of drive of the club, the fact that it was kind of like this proper club, if you like. Yeah. And I would say to anyone who was actually looking to be a football fan, it's like, if you want the real experience of it, and you want something that you can actually go and see for without breaking the bank, that's got a real community, that you're actually going to, you know, when things go well, it's unparalleled. It's different when I watch Millwall at the Den versus going to watch, you know, times where I've watched Arsenal. You know, by comparison, I remember going to see Arsenal. I thought, well, I might as well throw myself into it. They got a penalty, so I stood up. And I was like, and my mate was like, sit down, mate, you're at the Emirates. It's like, this is a load of bullshit.
Yeah, not the same at all. Yeah.
It's like, and obviously, like, it's not always the case, but, and, you know, different fans are different, but like, I would say, you know, if you were thinking about it, then definitely do it. I think to everyone who's a fan, you know, keep fighting the good fight. Like, hang on, because it's, you know, we'll get there in the end, and everyone watching this will know what I mean. But like, we'll get there in the end, and you know, generally speaking, walk away if someone tries
That's a good piece of advice.
Because you're not. It's never worth it, and you know, you're better off just leaving it, because you know it's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I don't think you can give better advice than that. That's probably summing it up quite well. I mean, that's kind of the end of everything I've got planned. Is there anything else you particularly want to talk about or shout out or anything like that?
Yeah. Tell you what, one last thing. Saw something at the game on. I saw at the game against Bournemouth. I saw something that I'd never seen in football ever, in every game I've ever been to. And you'll have been at games where people giving jip to the lino, and the lino was having an absolute mare, and the ref had a mare and missed the foul on Mason Bennett for Dominic Solanke's goal. It happens, whatever, but then you expect to see some sort of, you know, decisions being made for certain offsides and fouls that, you know, were just like outrageous. And you've got basically the entirety of two stands, so it's kind of yelling "Lino, you're a cunt, Lino, you're a cunt," and it was loud, and obviously we were all just like, it was proper like vein bulging in the forehead, and he sort of looks to his right like that, and gives it that by his hip, and you know, he just stood up and he stood there and kind of went like that. And the whole crowd went completely silent.
Just shocked.
Because no one knew what to do.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, hang on a minute. You don't get to give anything back. This isn't how it works. This is the one, because it's like, you know, obviously without my football hat, I think, well, fair play. That's exactly what you would do.
But it just doesn't happen in football. Yeah.
You're a professional, mate.
You're getting paid. You're on a job right now. Yeah.
How can we say that you are judging this impartially if you're giving the fans
very true,
the wanker? So, and then he also gave it that Sorry, I'm doing it up here because I don't know what you can see on the thing. But and yeah, it was just like,
wow,
it was insane. Me and my dad was like, I've never seen it in like how, you know,
ridiculous amount of years.
40 odd years of going to watch it or whatever. It like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, just really, really baffling. So
I mean, to be fair, that might be something that's reviewed and taken under, because if there's, you know, people have made a story of it, then that isn't, because again, it is that partiality thing. Yeah, Community FC breaking news. No, but yeah, it's not even the fact that he's done it and it shocks people, but it is the impartiality thing that is going to be the issue when it comes to stuff like that. Because of course, no matter how he might be like, I've got my lino hat on, there's going to be even if it's 1% at the back of his mind being like, oh, fuck those guys, like, and so that can come into play. But yeah, that's a great story to finish on. I've never heard about that.
There you go.
Cool. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to you coming on. It's been a really interesting episode, and I'm really looking forward to doing some more non-Premier League clubs. I'm hoping to do from, you know, abroad. I'm even trying to get some non-league stuff in the work. So I'm trying to be inclusive, and that's the point of Community FC, to reach everyone. But it's been a fascinating episode. And actually, I feel I could have talked for hours with you about it actually tonight. So it's been a great episode. So a big thank you for you coming on. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Aidan. It's been a real pleasure to be able to talk at length about Millwall and someone who'll listen.
No, my absolute pleasure. And I hope everyone's going to learn something from it. So I just want to say, if you have been enjoying this content, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, drop us a comment. I'm sure if you drop some comments on Millwall, Jack will probably get in the comments and respond to you if you've got anything particularly you want to. But let's keep it nice. Let's not try and start anything in the comments on the subjects that we've talked about. Don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot more content coming soon. We've got Roundup review coming on Friday from midweek matches, and then carrying on Monday as well. And yeah, hit the notification bell if you're like me and forget. So it's a nice little reminder for everyone. But that has been my club for Millwall. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and we will catch you all for an episode really soon. Thanks very much.